A little while back in a video, I said, I'll make a separate video where we talk about some different types of axes. And so today we're going to talk about axes. This is not a comprehensive review of axe patterns. There are a lot of those. If you want a comprehensive list of axe patterns, you should check out Exploring Axe History. Now, before we jump into the different types of axes, let's learn a little bit of axe anatomy. This part up here, the metal part, is the head of the axe, and this part here is the handle. That's pretty basic. I think everybody could figure that out. The head's got a few different parts. This part, the sharp part, is called the bit. This is a single bit axe. It's got one sharp edge. A double bit axe, which we'll get to, would have two sharpened edges.
Well, duh.
You have the toe, which is the farthest point up here from the handle, and down here you have the heel of the bit. Kind of as if this bit was a foot, toe and heel. This part of the axe coming down here is sometimes referred to as the beard. This is what people think of when they think of a bearded axe, is this big drop down here. Some axe beards are just small and more like an axe goatee. The sides of the axe head, right here and here, these are called the cheeks of the head. And around on the back, we have the pole of the axe, or the butt of the axe head. Some axes have a hardened pole, and it's hardened so that it can be used more like a hammer for pounding on things, driving in tent stakes, or whatever uses you might have. If it is not hardened and you use that axe for pounding on, you'll end up with something like this that you see quite often on older axe heads, where you get something called mushrooming, where the metal has been pounded and it's pushed out on either side. This head just has a little bit of mushrooming from being used as a hammer and pounding on things. Well, this metal is not hardened for that purpose. Right here we have the eye of the axe. That's where the handle goes through the axe head. Some heads, like this one, will have these little parts that stick down here. These are called lugs. Some have more like V-shaped lugs. You can also have axe heads that have something like this, where you have what's called a collar below the axe head. The eye of the axe extended down makes a collar. So now let's talk about the axe handle. The axe handle has some different parts. Most axe handles are made of wood, and this is a pretty typical axe handle right here. Some axes have metal handles. These Estwing axes, where it's just one solid piece all cast together. Some axes have fiberglass handles like this, where it's just kind of bonded into that head. For your more traditional shape, your wooden handle, let's talk about the different parts of the handle. So starting up here, the handle has a shoulder. The shoulder of the handle is this part right here under the head. After the shoulder, we go down, and this part of the handle here, this curve, this is the belly of the handle. And if we go down to this end, this curved part here, we have the handle throat. And at the very end, we'll have a palm swell or a knob on the end of the handle. Now, handles can vary a lot. If you have a more straight handle, you're not going to have that curved belly and throat. You'll still have a shoulder up here. You still have your palm swell down here at the end of the handle. These types of slip fit handles, they don't really have a shoulder and don't have a palm swell. It's just a straight handle. So now let's talk about axes. Now I'm going to go through the axes in a few different categories, and these are just the way that I have broken these down in a way that I think makes sense. We're going to go from smallest to largest. Let's start with single bit axes. And the first type of single bit axe is the hatchet. Now, hatchets are small axes with a head that weighs typically less than a pound or a pound and a half, no more than that. So small head, short handle, maybe a 12-inch to 14-inch handle. Hatchets come in all sorts of shapes and sizes. There's a lot of special purpose hatchets, things like carpenter's hatchets. Some of them have a hammer pole on the back. Here we've got a hatchet with a hammer face and claws on the back for pulling nails. There are as many different types of hatchets as you can imagine. Moving on up from the hatchet, we have what's sometimes called a camp axe. Now a camp axe will have a larger head. It's usually more like the 2.5 pound sized head on a larger handle. This handle is about 18 inches long. A camp axe can have anywhere in that 16 to 18 inch handle. This is a Estwing camp axe, and this is a plum camp axe. So it's a little larger than a hatchet, a little heavier, just overall a little bit bigger. The next size up is something called a boy's axe. Sometimes a boy's axe and a camp axe, those terms get mixed up. Sometimes axe manufacturers use those terms interchangeably. I think Estwing does. I think they sell this axe as a camp axe, and then they sell the larger version of this that's this size as just a larger camp axe. A boy's axe has this slightly smaller head, so it's in that 2 to 2.5 pound weight range for an axe head. Handles can be anywhere in like 20 to 24 inches, sometimes up to 28 inches for a boy's axe handle. So it's just a slightly smaller than full-sized axe. And then we have a full-sized axe. A full-size axe handles can go anywhere from 30 to 36 inches long or longer, depending on the purpose or use of that axe. Axe heads can weigh anywhere from 3 pounds to 4 pounds or more, depending on the use and purpose of that axe. So I know I wasn't going to cover all of the axe patterns in this video, but we can look at the shape of this axe head compared to this one. You can see they're very different shape, very different size. This one's probably around 4 pounds, and this one is a 3.5 pound axe. Different patterns, often designed for different purposes or just made in different parts of the country for different types of wood by different manufacturers. That's why I'm not going to cover a bunch of different axe patterns, just some general axe categories. Now let's move on and look at some double bit axes. This is a double bit axe with about a 2.5 pound head. This is on a 28 inch handle, so it's a little bit smaller. And that is what's called a cruiser. And then we have like a full size double bit axe, anywhere from 3 to 5 pound heads, all sorts of different shapes and patterns. Longer handles. This is a 36 inch handle. This axe has definitely been around the block a little bit. And at one point it was painted gold. And that pretty much covers the general purpose axes for chopping wood. Now let's take a look at some axes that have very specific purposes. We're not going to look at a ton of these, but let's take a look at a few that maybe are a little more common to come across depending on where in the country you are. So first up, let's talk about axes that are made for splitting firewood. You can certainly use almost any axe for splitting firewood, but there are some that are made for that purpose. So here we have a splitting axe, and this is a heavy axe head. This is about a 5 pound, maybe even a little more, axe head, and it's very wedge shaped. So this is an axe that is just made for splitting wood. And then we have things like splitting mauls, and they come in all sorts of shapes and sizes. See, it's got this very wedge shapes going on here. Some really unique geometry designed to try to keep it from getting stuck in logs, but still putting a lot of splitting pressure. And then we've got just the old splitting maul. This is an 8 pound splitting maul. It's just a big, giant wedge piece of metal that you can pound stuff with the back if you have some splitting wedges that you're pounding in. So that's the splitting maul. You're not going to use that for chopping down trees or chopping logs, but it's great for splitting logs and for pounding on stuff. Next special purpose axes you might come across is a firefighting axe. Everyone knows what firefighting axe with a spike on the back. You see those quite a bit, especially on fire trucks. I don't have one sitting here, but I have a picture of the one that I polished up and gave my brother. And then we have axes that are made for forestry use. This is a Pulaski tool. This is an axe with a mattock blade on the back for digging. This is a tool that was designed for firefighting and is used all over the place. It's used for wildland fire, it's used for trail building, it's used for forest maintenance. I use it for cutting bushes around my property. It's a fantastic tool. Then we have axes that are made for lumber processing purposes. Things like this. This is a broad axe. It's actually a hewing axe. It is flat on one side, and then this side is beveled. And this is made for chopping logs flat on one side to make boards or beams. Originally, it would have had lugs on this side as well. Unfortunately, it got damaged quite a bit, and this side, the lugs were deformed and folded over. Not made for cutting people's heads off. A lot of people see something this big and they assume it's made for battling and cutting heads off, but this one's made for making beams. Oh, hey, as I was picking some stuff up here, I realized that I had forgot to mention one of the categories of special purpose axes, and that is this one right here. This is a brush axe or a bush axe. Goes by a lot of different names, and there's a lot of variations on this tool.
Some folks call it a sling blade. I call it a Kaiser blade. Just kind of a long wood handle, kind of like an axe handle, with a long blade on it, shaped kind of like a banana.
This is another variation of this tool. This one is perhaps a little less axe-like and more giant machete on a stick, but it's the same tool, just a different form. So now that we've covered that, you continue what you were doing. Me, I will continue what you just sit there. You're doing fine. I will continue what I was doing. And the last special purpose axes I want to talk about is the tactical axes. They really can just be anything. You can make whatever you want and slap the label tactical axe on it. So they run the gamut from things like just a tomahawk like this to spike tomahawks. We've got this CRKT design here. And then you have this whole wide range of things, and you get stuff like this where it's sort of an axe, but also tried to be a pry bar, and you know, nobody really knows what it is. Throw that in there as a category because it is very ubiquitous and you see a lot of them. Tactical axes or tactical tomahawks. I think that covers it. Thank you all for watching. I hope you learned something about axes. Please leave me all of your comments and your thoughts and your knowledge about axes down in the comments. I appreciate all of you, and I will see you all next time.